Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host today. I'm also the creator and the moderator of thechocolatelife.com. Today, I'm going to be doing my January news roundup and Ask Me Anything about cocoa or chocolate. I do this once a month, more or less, and normally I do it earlier in the month, but because of my travel schedule and other things that came up, I'm doing it at the end of the month this January. I ask everyone, go in the comments, whether you're looking at this episode on YouTube, LinkedIn, or Facebook, and on YouTube, it would be the live chat replay or the live chat. Go in and let me know where in the world you're connecting from, right? And if you have a question about any of the news stories that I bring up, or if you have just a general question about cocoa and chocolate you'd like me to answer for you, just boom, put them in the comments and I will get to it. I want to share, as I often do, this is the homepage of thechocolatelife.com right now. So this is live, and it helps serve as a reminder for everyone who's watching that this episode, like every episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of thechocolatelife.com. If you're not a member, you can click on the green button up here. I'm logged in, so it says account. But if you're not a member or you're not logged in, it will say join. Click. There has always been a free level of membership. But if you have the resources to support the work financially, then there are paid memberships with a bunch of different benefits which accrue to the different levels of membership. So you can go there and support what it is that I'm doing. So as with every single episode of Pod Save Chocolate, there is a post which is created for each of them. So what you'll do is you'll see the current episode is pinned into the top rail. That's what this set of fours is called. There's also previous episodes of Pod Safe Chocolate listed here. You can go down through the feed and find previous episodes, but you'll also notice that there is this hashtag, and you can go find links to all the episodes of Pod Safe Chocolate. And there's a similar kind of link for all of the episodes for the Chocolate Life Live, which is the series that I did, 149 episodes over about 2 years, similar to Pod Save Chocolate, which I started this last November. But that's a little bit about the way the Chocolate Life goes. So here is today's post, the post for this episode. And one of the reasons why I put together these posts is that I will very, very often have links to resources. So in the future, if you want, you can go find the link to watch this on YouTube, or you can find the links to watch on LinkedIn or Facebook. So they're all there. But also what I'm going to do is I'm going to link to resources. And the reason why I link to the resources is so that you don't have to pay attention to the URLs during the live stream. You can listen to what it is that I have to say. If you do have the opportunity to go and look at these things and read along with what it is I'm doing, certainly that's something, if you have that resource, and you're not just listening to it in your car or in your kitchen or something like that, you can go ahead and do that. But you always are going to have the ability to go back and take a look at all of the resources and read them at your leisure. And then also that if there are any things that are mentioned in comments or in the interactions with people who do participate live, then what I will do is I will put those links into the resource list as well. Right, so that's the ground rules, and I know that people are watching, but if you get a chance, go into the comments. Let me know where in the world you're connecting from. Not LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, that I can see, but if you're connecting from the United States, you're connected for a foreign country, let me know who you are. We'll get a shout out up on screen and let people know that you're watching today. That'd be really great. So what I want to do is I want to start out with some updates on chocolate festivals and calendars. The first thing that came to my attention, which is relatively new, is that the organizers of the Salon du Chocolat in Paris, so Event International, have teamed up with an international events management company out of the Frankfurt Messe in Germany, and they're going to be organizing an edition of the Salon du Chocolat in New York City, as you can see, for November 8th through 10th. This year. So if you have participated in the Salon du Chocolat in New York in the past, the last one was in 2019, which was the first one after 2013. So 2013 was Hurricane Sandy. The festival went dark in the United States for 5-6 years. They came back in 2019, very, very successful at Javits, moving from sort of Midtown Chelsea area. Went to Javits, very, very successful. They tried to do it again in 2021, 2022, height of COVID, and unfortunately things fell apart. So after coming back, there's now going to be a Salon du Chocolat in New York City at the end of the year. So October has always been a hugely busy month for festivals and events and conferences proceedings. October, and now we've got November, which is getting increasingly busy. I am going to be having a call with the organizers later today, and when there is more information about the festival, I will be posting it here on the Chocolate Life, so you can keep track of it. And just in case anybody is interested, I do have this post called the Chocolate Events and Holidays Calendar. And if we go and look at November, what you'll do is you'll see here are some of the events which I already know about, which are happening in November. But you can go to this this post. It is in the top rail at the moment, just updated the day before yesterday or something like that, with all of these new events. So you can go there and you can find things. Now, if you're watching this and you know an event, or you know a chocolate-themed holiday, or a conference or some other program that's related to cocoa and chocolate, you can put it in the post, the comments to this post. You can go all the way down to the bottom. If you're a member, you can go add it. And what I will do is I will add this event to the listing. So that's the first bit of news related to events that I wanted to let everyone know about. The second one is about Euro Chocolate. So Euro Chocolate is one of the largest and oldest festivals in Europe. It sort of goes back and forth. It vies with the Salon du Chocolat in Paris about whether it is the largest in the world. There is a festival in spring, which is in March, but the big festival is at the end of October, which is this year is scheduled for the 18th to the 27th of October. So if you have time in your schedule, you want to go, you might be going to the Chocolats Portugal event, you might be going to some other event in Europe, and want to go and see Euro Chocolate. Put those dates in your calendar, the 18th to the 27th of October. Now, unfortunately, we don't know yet, as of today, whether or not the festival is going to be held in Perugia, which is the historical home of the event, or if it's going to be held at the Umbrifiere, which is not that far away. That decision is going to be made in a little while. I hope to understand at the end of March, or by the end of March, when that will be. And when I do know, I will let everyone know. And I will let everyone know in the events calendar. So you can go here and you'll be able to see where these events are happening. All right. So the second event to talk about this morning is Euro Chocolate in October in Italy. I want to give a quick shout out to to Lynn, who's connecting from the UK. For some reason, she's just identified as a generic LinkedIn user. But Lynn, thank you very much for connecting today. Greetings to you from Suffolk. Thanks for giving us a shout out. And look forward to perhaps connecting on some of the other topics which are of interest to us, to get sort of an update on the worlds, where our worlds intersect. So please reach out, and we will think of something in the next month or so to do a quick heads up on things. Now, I also learned earlier this week, this was originally a post in the Well-Tempered group in Facebook, but I was connected yesterday with Dustin Cornett. Dustin, people may know Dustin's name because he is the organizer of the Craft Chocolate Challenge. He's recently moved, or is in the process of moving, from Western Kentucky to sort of central Indiana. And in central Indiana, a little town called Rushville, he's going to be organizing the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival. That festival is going to be handling the 22nd to the 23rd of November. Now, at the moment, the website is not working, but it is listed. So if you do go to the events calendar, and we do go into November, you'll see that it is on the calendar. The dates are in the calendar for the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival. And when I get the link to the website, I will put that website here. So if you are a craft chocolate maker, this is the weekend before Thanksgiving. It's late in the year, so it may be a challenge getting out of the workshop to it may be again, it may be maybe a challenge to get to workshop because it's the end of the year. But if you, it will be worth reaching out to Dustin. And I know that there are going to be some really interesting interactions between the finalists in the 2023 and 2024 edition of the Craft Chocolate Challenge. So if you're interested in participating in the Craft Chocolate Challenge, one reason to do so might be because of exposure you're going to get at this festival. So just something to consider. But it is going, so we have the Dallas Chocolate Festival, which is in early October. Then we have the Salon in New York. This is after the Salon in New York, but sort of in the Midwest. This is likely to be one of the bigger festival, which is focusing on small makers, craft and specialty makers. So go think about it, add it to your calendar. Not far from Indianapolis, not far from Cincinnati. There's a fabulous chocolate maker in Cincinnati, Paul Picton at Maverick. So there might be an opportunity to do a bunch of things while you're in the area. And I can highly, highly recommend that part of town. And I'm looking forward to participating. Now, it might, Dustin and I have talked about my participation in the festival. There's a chance you'll see that there's an overlapping date just above this for the Royal Cocoa Festival in Ethionia, Nigeria. This is put together by His Majesty Oba Dokun Thompson, who is also the founder of International Cocoa Diplomacy. So there's a chance that I will be in Nigeria during this time. But if I'm not, if I'm not, I will be in Indiana for the Midwest Craft Chocolate Festival. And even if I can't be there in person, I'm going to be supporting it every way that I can. And Dustin and I are going to be doing, and others are going to be doing the judging and announcing the Craft Chocolate Festival over the next couple of weeks and months. So pay attention to those updates. So after that, I didn't put it in, but I am going to add it to the post. Is April 6th and 7th in Albuquerque, New Mexico at Expo, New Mexico, the Expo Fairgrounds. There's going to be the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival, which says it's the world's largest festival for chocolate, coffee, and gourmet foods. If we add all of those things together, chocolate, coffee, and gourmet foods, it may be the world's largest festival. That's a great thing. I'm going to be doing 2 tasting/pairing classes on Saturday, 2 tasting/pairing classes on Sunday. And I'm really looking forward to doing them. They're not included in the entry ticket price. They're going to be special ticket events. But if you're going to be in the Albuquerque area or looking for something to do in early April to get to someplace new for you, go think about the Albuquerque, this festival in Albuquerque, the Southwest Chocolate and Coffee Festival. You're quick train ride, so not far that far a drive from Santa Fe. So if you're a fan of the work of Georgia O'Keeffe, there's also some small craft chocolate things. Cocoa House is in Santa Fe. You have Eldora Chocolate, so there's a really, really good craft chocolate maker in Albuquerque. So wonderful things to do in and around Albuquerque. And you can come and take part in classes that I'm going to be giving and other people are giving. And so it's not just chocolate. Again, it's coffee. There are foods from the Southwest. I think there's a fairly large wine and I think beer component to it as well. And I hope to be organizing those or adding those things into the pairing classes that I'm going to be doing. Tickets are going to be limited to the classes. Not exactly sure how many there are, but if you want to make sure you have a chance to do that, go do it. I'm hoping to be able to get my hands on a couple of books of my book, Discover Chocolate, using them, being able to give away signed copies to people who are in the classes. So go think about that. It's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to supporting the specialty chocolate community in the Southwest even more by my participation in this event. And so if you're around, please do. Now, I haven't added it to the main post. I will add this link to the main post after we get done this morning. Another thing that came across my feed yesterday or the day before was the announcement in the finalists of the Good Food Awards. So there were this year over 1,700 entries. From 1,700 entries, of which 428 were selected as finalists, right? And then, and these are across all categories. So beer, charcuterie, cheese, and chocolate. So these are the finalists who in the chocolate category for this year's Good Food Awards. Obviously, the link is in here. It includes, all-time favorites of mine and friends, including Sean Eskenazi, Brian Graham at Fruition Chocolate Works, Tom and Monica Rogan at Good Now Farms, a bunch of, really, really good producers, and some names which I'm less familiar with, which is always fun. And one of the reasons why I love looking through this is it gives me ideas about places to go and look for new things. I may agree with them, I may not agree with them, but at least they're catching a much brighter net. So we see French Broad, who people know, Mocha Origins, also in New York State, and then Moku Chocolate, who has been one of the consistent winners in the Craft Chocolate Challenge. So you'll find them in the chocolate category. Scroll down, and there's also the confectionery category. So one of the things about the Good Food Awards is that all of these makers must reside in the United States. So they're divided into a number of different regions, and things are organized by regions. So we have Dick Taylor, right, who we would expect. But in the confectionery category, I don't think they won anything in the chocolate category. They did not. I think that's interesting. A good friend of mine, Christopher Curtin at Eclat Chocolat in West Chester, Pennsylvania. Really, really interesting fellow, classically trained background. Some of you may know the history of a bar called the Good and Evil Bar, which was a collaboration between it's like all of a sudden the names just went bunk. Eric Repair of Le Bernardin in New York, as well as the late and missed Anthony Bourdain. So the Good and Evil Bar was a collaboration between those two, and Christopher Curtin of Eclat Chocolat was the person who put together the chocolate manufacturing. So he was responsible for getting the bars made. And there is an episode of Tony Bourdain's, I'm not sure if it's on the road or what it was, where they went to Peru, they went to the Marañón River Valley. So this is Marañón Fortunato, I believe, cocoa beans. So he talks of, so there's a fabulous episode with Eric and Anthony. His brother was a neighbor of mine when I lived in New York. And Chris, as they're going around looking for cocoa beans and great food in Lima. If you've never been to Lima, there is amazingly good food in Lima. The traffic is not very good, but if you want to have some great food, I mean, Lima is a place to go. It should be on a bucket list for food. So if you're going to the country, you want to go to Machu Picchu, you want to Cusco, make sure you head through Lima and have a chance to spend some time in getting some great food. Right. Anyway, so two different categories: confections, chocolate. Here are the winners in this year's Good Food Awards. Just a little bit of history. I was on the committees that helped set up the criteria for what good meant in both the chocolate and confections category. I've been a judge in the confections category in the past, although I've never been a judge in the chocolate category. It's a very, very interesting competition. It's organized very differently from most other competitions, and it's worth paying attention to as it celebrates small makers and producers, not just in cocoa and chocolate or chocolate and confections, but also in adjacent categories. So you can find some good beer, good charcuterie if you're not a vegetarian or vegan, but also coffee and pickles. So if you're a big sauerkraut or other pickle, there are lots of things that you can go there and take a look at and support local producers. So that's, events and things related to events and competitions that came across my feed in the month of January. And when we want to go next, what we want to do is start taking a look at some other news. The first one of which is around the notion of what sustainable cocoa is and what some of the challenges are associated with sustainable production. And so I'm not entirely sold on the notion that Cargill, as the best arbiter of what is and is not sustainable practices, they are named defendants in lawsuits related to illegal child labor and trafficking and things, illegal labor in the cocoa supply chain in West Africa. And so I don't necessarily know that having them discuss this or be the representative which is talking about these claims is necessarily something that I would take with large grains of salt. I don't know how much they're actually doing. But one of the things that they talk about, which I think is very, very interesting, and I think points to if you're a craft chocolate maker and you want to be able to communicate, you're a specialty chocolate maker and you want to be able to communicate with customers, it says, among North American shoppers, our research finds that 1 in 2 consumers say sustainability impacts their chocolate product purchase decisions. So 50% of all consumers say that sustainability is an important consideration when they come to thinking about their chocolate purchases. And 6 in 10 of them are drawn to cocoa sustainability messages on product packaging. Now, we all know that, well, no, I don't know that we all know, but there is a difference between stated purchase intent and actual purchase intent. And we don't know the actual effect of, they say that sustainability has an impact on their purchase. I don't know that that impact is greater or able to overcome price considerations or things like that. So that is an interesting challenge. But I think interesting that more than 50% of all consumers say that they are drawn to cocoa sustainability messaging on the product packaging. So as a specialty chocolate maker, if you have, so specialty chocolate being any chocolate which is made from what can be considered to be specialty cocoa beans, so something that is not mass market, consumer, bulk commodity cocoa is excluded from that. But if it's got any kind of certification, so much as I'm not a believer in Rainforest Alliance or fair trade certification, those would be considered specialty beans. Organic certification would be considered to be specialty beans. Anything which has got a specialty fermentation would be a non-standard fermentation. So any winner of the Cocoa of Excellence would be considered to be a specialty bean. If you, for example, were a finalist and won an award in the AVPA, the Agence Valorisation de Produits Agriculture Awards, which awards makers in producing countries, so chocolate makers in producing countries. So the beans used to make those would be considered to be specialty beans. So if you're working with them and you're interested in influencing consumer decisions, think about sustainability messages on the packaging. Because according to this research, right, more than 50% of consumers are influenced by those things. But they also talk about, I think, a positive thing, and this is a quote from the representative from Cargill, that the cocoa supply chain involves thousands of smallholder farmers producing a small number of beans from individual plots. And this thousands should be millions, not thousands. I mean, in Ghana, I believe the number is 500,000 smallholder farms, and it may be 3 million people associated, when you think about the entire farming family. I believe in Cote d'Ivoire, or maybe it's the other way around, it's 800,000. Those numbers may be switched. In Nigeria, it's a couple 100,000 farms. So we're talking about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of smallholder farmers just in 3 countries, over not just thousands of smallholder farmers. So understating the issue is probably not good. Many of them are remote rural communities with little connectivity or infrastructure. And this is actually the head of sustainability at OFI, which is Olam Food Ingredients. So we're talking about Olam, another one of the companies who are named defendants in lawsuits. So taking many of their claims that were mediation and the impact that they're actually having with a grain of salt. But in this particular case, and then understating the magnitude of the problem. But it is very, very true that people in remote rural communities with little connectivity and other infrastructure, especially transportation infrastructure, the infrastructure to do consistent fermentation is often lacking. These end up being really big problems, which make pinning down solutions difficult, right? So solutions, how do we address child labor? So farmers have difficulty paying for labor, so the children can help on the farm on weekends or after school. Again, right? Sometimes no school is nearby, or the family cannot provide the documents needed to enroll. There's often no one root cause. This is just hand waving and gaslighting on the problem. Big companies like OFI, right? There is enough money in the system to be able to address these problems. And what they're doing is they're pushing off responsibility for any of their ability to be able to have a direct impact. In my opinion, I believe that they're pushing off their ability. Right? Cocoa, even if we say it's 5,000 metric tons at $4,700 a ton, that's today's this week's price. So we're talking about $25 billion. Then chocolate itself is an industry of over $200 billion. The vast majority of the disparity between $25 and $200 billion is at the retail and manufacturing level. And so there is enough money in the system if these people were serious about solving the problem. However, their business models rely on perpetuating the problem. And so there is an insane conflict of interest there. But nonetheless, I would recommend you go and read this. Again, taking with a grain of salt the fact that these are representatives from Cargill and Olam and companies like that who are cited as the experts here. But there is some good language and some good ideas that can be teased out of this nonetheless. And I'm interested in your thoughts. You can go into the comments here on the Chocolate Life for the post for today and let me know what you think about what's going on. And this is a relatively recent, so it's the 4th of January, 2024. Let's see, is there any mention of the EUDR? Nope, there's no mention of the EUDR in the article. And this is probably one of the most complex challenges that we're talking about for sustainability, because the deforestation regulation is very, very, at the moment, front of mind when it comes to sustainability issues. And I believe this article does talk about, I'm sorry, I didn't read it this morning. I read it yesterday as part of putting this together. But they do talk about the connection between cocoa and deforestation. But what they do is they claim that the connection between cocoa as one of the largest drivers of deforestation has to do with palm oil. And it turns out palm oil is not an ingredient in specialty chocolate. It's an ingredient in compound, and it's an ingredient in cheap industrial chocolate. And so when we look at, for example, what it is that we want to do at international cocoa diplomacy, what we want to do is we want to shift consumer demand towards specialty chocolate, which by definition is made by specialty cocoa. And then by shifting demand to specialty chocolate, which by definition would also not include any palm oil, or other non-cocoa butter fats, that what we can do is we can increase the demand for specialty cocoa beans. And so it's really, really important to understand that, what they're saying is, cocoa is a driver of deforestation here, but it's only about, it is at 7%, I believe. Palm oil, deforestation related to palm oil is at about 33% of the total deforestation, which can be attributed to agriculture. So go take a look at it. There's lots of interesting information in here, which can help you become a better advocate. So better equipped to be able to answer questions that people might have. So if you're interested in any of these issues, you'll have a more complete understanding. And it is that more complete understanding which will enable you to deliver more nuanced arguments, which is what we all want to do, I think. So go take a look at that. Along the same thing, what I want to do is, I have covered a company called WinWin, WNWN. So WinWin, they're doing a chocolate alternative in the UK. There's another one in Germany called Planet A that's also doing an alternative. There's one in California called California Culture that's using cell culturing as opposed to precision fermentation. There are lots of attempts to be able to make a cocoa-free, quote unquote, chocolate. Number one is, it's like most sustainable chocolates ever. In the end, right, if it doesn't taste good, it's not going to buy it. People are not going to buy the sustainability claim if it tastes lousy. So I really don't care whether or not this is the most sustainable chocolate ever. And by the way, if it doesn't conform to the standard of identity in the U.S. Code of Federal Regulations, or it doesn't conform to the regulations in the Codex Alimentarius, you cannot call it chocolate. And so, interestingly, here we got this company called Voyage Foods, right? What they're talking about is this is a result of a life cycle assessment. So when they say most sustainable, they're talking about life cycle investment. So cradle to grave shows that it's cocoa-free chocolate. Number one, this is a contradiction in terms, right? There is no such thing as cocoa-free chocolate. It is chocolate or it is not chocolate. It is a chocolate adjacent product, but you cannot have cocoa-free chocolate. It doesn't exist. These things, it's not. So number one, I understand this is Food Business News, or no, Green Queen. They're trying to promote these things, but right. So I get really annoyed, as you can probably tell, when people don't take a look at labeling laws in the press they put out for this. So Voyage has a portfolio of nut-free spreads, cocoa-free chocolates, and bean-free coffee. Again, if it's not made from coffee beans, it's not coffee. It's coffee adjacent. It's a coffee analog. It's something. But if you make it from chicory or you make it from something else, I don't think it's legally coffee. I actually have to go and look at what CFR 21 says about coffee. I've actually never taken a look at it. But it has a nut-free hazelnut and peanut butter. Again, if there are no nuts in it, is it hazelnut? Is it peanut butter? I'm completely and totally confused about what that labeling is. I'd have to go and take a look closer at the labeling and understand what the labeling regulations are. For people who are in fact have problems with allergens, so if you have peanut allergen, a tree nut allergen, I can imagine that having a spread that behaves like a traditional nut butter and tastes something like a traditional nut butter would be good, but we can't call them nut butters, right? And I'm being redundant here and talking over and over again because you get an idea about how strongly I feel about this. So the chocolate alternative, okay, so it is an alternative to chocolate. It is not chocolate, so we're fine. It's made from a blend of grape seeds, sunflower protein, RSPO. I'm not familiar with RSPO is as an organization. I'll go copy the link and put it in the post for today. So it's RSPO certified palm oil and shea kernel oil. So not chocolate, right? It doesn't appear that there is any cocoa product. Oh, what they do, so right, and it says that there are anyway, so go take a read at it. Tell me what you think. I mean, is it really chocolate? I mean, obviously, in my opinion, it's not chocolate, but what are your thoughts? I mean, would you buy this product solely because of its total life cycle assessment, right? That it reduced greenhouse gas emissions. Would you buy it if it didn't taste good, right? So, why are you consuming chocolate in the first place, right? And what is it for? Right. So go take a look at it and think about this. So again, from Lynn at LinkedIn. Again, Lynn, I have no idea why your name is not showing up. I'm guessing you're logged into your LinkedIn account. There may be something which is off with the interface between StreamYard and LinkedIn today. This happens sometimes on occasion. I'm not sure. Surely it is just a carob bar. So it doesn't actually mention here in this article that carob is one of the ingredients. So, all right, and sometimes carob is used as the flavoring. For example, in the Win-Win bar, I believe the primary ingredient is barley. Is barley. or some other grain, and carob may be used as a flavoring ingredient in it. But carob is not mentioned here as an ingredient, and it doesn't talk about what they are. I will go and take a look and see if I can find a little bit more about how the product is made, right? To see if I can get a more complete ingredients list. But just know it's not a carob bar. There's nothing new here apart from blatant marketing calling it chocolate. Yeah, win-win is what you're talking about. Now, I've tasted some win-win product. If I grew up on really inexpensive milk chocolate, using like skim milk as opposed to full cream, or whole milk as a powder. I get where a product like the one from Win-Win or Planet A, or maybe I have, which I've only had very small taste, and it was almost 2 years ago. Haven't tasted this at all to understand. I can get where these would be okay, but if you're at all interested in the consumer, in the consumption of quality, good tasting chocolate, I have yet to find of one of these chocolate alternatives which steps up to the table and delivers a gustatory element to it. Something which is good tasting that I find would replace any of the chocolate that I eat on a regular basis. So this is just me with 25 years of experience evaluating chocolate on a semi-professional and a professional basis. I have yet to taste anything which steps into that gap, right? And so, yeah, again, I think that this whole idea is, are you going to be attracted to chocolate based solely on, or a chocolate alternative, right? So what I use the phrase chocolate adjacent, a chocolate adjacent product, solely on sustainability claims. And so another one of the challenges that I have with this, number one, Lynn, if we are using carob as a flavoring, go take a look at how much carob is harvested in the world, and then try to figure out how much of the chocolate market, which is based on somewhere between 4 and 5 million metric tons of cocoa beans. Go figure out what the carob harvest is, and how much of the existing chocolate that's made in the world would be able to be flavored with carob. And it's a very, very small amount. One of the things which is interesting, I believe the largest producer of carob in the world is Portugal, right? And I don't necessarily know that they're going to be able to grow the supply of carob quickly enough to be able to meet the demand from these chocolate adjacent products. And then, of course, there is the issue associated with labeling. And then finally, what this does is it avoids tackling the issue of illegal labor. It avoids tackling the issues of climate change in cocoa. It avoids all of those issues. So none of the money which was made by Win-Win, this company Voyage Foods, anybody, none of this is going to raise consumer awareness around deforestation, around climate change, and around the issues associated with improving the lives and livelihoods of millions of farming families around in cocoa, around the world. But then they're all the related. So, what are the issues related to labor and chronic kidney disease, and sugar, and palm, and other large scale commodities. It's they are working with sugar. So where is the impact related to sugar? So we need to be very, very careful about how we parse these claims. And so really, really important. So what I do want to, sort of on a related kind of note, I'm going to jump something here. This was, it came across my feed relatively recently. It was originally published last October, which is, using cocoa pods as a source, not just for chocolate. You can't use cocoa pods as a source of chocolate. Obviously, you need to strip the beans of the seeds from the inside of the pod and process them into chocolate. And also potentially flame retardant. And what they're talking about here is that the pod is a source which is very, very high in fiber of lignin, which is a component of wood. And you can use the lignin in cocoa pods to be able to produce fire retardant products. And so really interesting, anything, any way to be able to pay the farmer more, right? So for example, delivering whole pods rather than just the wet beans in a bucket is a good thing. However, anytime you take a cocoa pod out of the farm, what you need to do is you need to replace it with the nutritional component of the pod, right? They're normally allowed to decompose, compost on the farm, and all of the nutrients which are in the pod will go back into the soil. So interesting idea of when we talk about value-added products, let's take the pods and we don't need to turn them into flour. We don't press them maybe we can press them for oil as a part of this. So if you press the oil out of it and then you take what's left over and you use it for, extract the lignin somehow. There's not a whole lot of discussion about if this is efficient or not. So I don't know if, pods are a hugely efficient source. But if you think about it, if a pod weighs a kilogram, right, and you have 10 million metric tons wet. I'm, just trying to do the pods, what they're talking about there, 24 million tons of leftover cocoa pod husks. So from I think, so that's 2.5 times the wet mass roughly. All right. So from an order of magnitude, that's probably pretty close. But what I'd also want to know is what is the cost of the infrastructure in order to be able to process this, right? So if I'm so I need to be at a place where there are very, very large quantities of pods within a very, very small geographic area. And so I'm not entirely sure this makes a whole lot of economic sense. It may be possible to do, technically possible to do. I don't know that it's economically possible to do, but I think it's really interesting. And, what are your thoughts? I mean, I am real adamant that if you take a pod out of the farm and you don't replace it by either paying the farmer for the pod or replacing it with some sort of, for example, an organic fertilizer input to be able to replace the nutrient composition of the pod, then this is a non-starter, right? Because if you take it off the farm, the farmer's not compensated. It means they need to pay more for fertilizer. Fertilizers have a tendency to be synthetically generated from petroleum. Bad idea all the way around. So interesting concept. I think the execution and all the small details is where it's going to be really, really important. If you're in California, I'm going to assume some of you are. This is, again, something that came up last year. It's been sitting in my inbox. I haven't gotten to it, but I was looking through it today. That in addition to new regulations on cadmium and lead and other heavy metal contamination, there are a bunch of other food additives, very few of which are in chocolate, I don't think. They might be in an ingredient which you might put in a confection. So you might have something which is added into a center, which might have been processed with one of these ingredients. But they include brominated vegetable oil, which is going to be deep frying, potassium bromate, propylparaben, and red dye number 3. And people may know that red dye number 2 was something that was banned in the U.S., I believe, in the 1970s. But this is going to affect the state of California, which means that if you make any product which is going to be sold in the state of California, this is something that you need to be aware of. So just a quick heads up on that, to know about where the legislation with respect to food additives. So California is going to be the most aggressive state in the country, and it's going to be leading things. So these are things, again, if you got a product you're selling in California, you need to be aware of how these might have an effect. So you need to know if you're using it, but if you're buying an ingredient or component from someone else, you need to make sure that the ingredient that you're purchasing from some other supplier also does not have, and none of these products were used in the manufacturing of the ingredients that you're using. So just quick heads up on that. We talked about this a little while ago. We learned that Mars was in the process, and I'm sorry for it taking so long, not entirely certain why the page is not loading. But there we go. Mars completes the takeover of Hotel Chocolat. So Mars, so when Hershey purchased Scharfenberger and Dagoba in, 2005 or thereabouts, the reason why they did it is that Hershey couldn't legitimately, make a claim to being a premium chocolate company. So they created a subsidiary, right? They called it Hershey Artisan Confections, and they put Dagoba, Scharfenberger, and Joseph Schmidt into that subsidiary. And that subsidiary was responsible for promoting and growing those brands. They almost immediately shut down Joseph Schmidt, and then recently Scharfenberger was bought back privately out of Hershey Artisan Confections. So Mars, similarly, I mean, even though it owns Dove, and there is sort of a slightly upscale branding associated with Dove, aimed primarily at women. In my experience, just looking at the advertising, the advertising is aimed primarily at women. Mars can't make a claim to being a premium chocolate company, although they have tried to do that with the Ethel M brand. Of course, most people don't know that the Ethel M is Mars, right? And it turns out that it's one of the members of the family that left, I believe, Mars Corporate might have purchased them back, might have brought them recently, but it's not considered to be a premium brand. And so Mars purchasing Hotel Chocolat in the UK gives them a foothold into a premium chocolate market. So people who know this will understand that the founders of this have been working on this for more than 40 years. The total purchase price was around £500 million. I think that the two founders, one of whom is Angus Thirlwell, walked away with something like 140, 150 million pounds a piece. So this is the payoff after 40 years of work. I was there. I went to a Hotel Chocolat when I was in London last October, had some of their hot chocolate. I'll put the link to that episode in today's post afterwards, so that you'll be able to get an idea for what I thought of their chocolate. But let me know if you're in the UK, what you think of the Hotel Chocolat brand, and whether or not you think that now that Hotel Chocolat is owned by Mars, whether that's going to have an influence on whether or not you're going to go and purchase from them again, or on a regular basis, or if you've never been a patron, if you're going to be a patron now that they are owned by Mars. When I was in Nigeria for the International Chocolate and Cocoa Forum a couple of weeks ago, we had a fabulous session when we were in Lagos, which was presented by the ambassador for Nigeria, who's in charge of foreign trade negotiations, and it was entirely on tax policy. And one of the things he was talking about is how tax policy affects things like, import tariffs. So related to the HSE, the Harmonized Standard Code, for example, cocoa beans in the United States are exempt from any import tariff. Equipment that is used. So if I have a tempering machine that's made in Italy and I bring it into the United States for the purpose of producing product, I don't pay an import duty on it, right? So changes in tax policy can have a huge effect on the vitality of a sector of economy, both as from a producing country and a consuming country. Really, really important. And I'm going to be doing an episode in the future about how I don't necessarily like to get into U.S. electoral politics, but what I want to do is I want to have a discussion. If you're watching this, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Is to start thinking about how would a blanket 10% import tariff on everything. So if you're a chocolate maker, you're currently not paying an import duty on cocoa beans. There's currently no import duty on cocoa butter. There are currently no import duty on machinery used to process chocolate. So if you're buying a melanger made in a foreign country, a tempering machine made in a foreign country, polycarbonate molds made in a foreign country, you're not paying import duties on those. But what would it mean for your business if all of a sudden there was a 10% import duty on everything? So would your business be able to support that kind of increase in basic costs? But this is a fabulous article which talks about how government policy is affecting Ghanaian cocoa farmers, and it's how specifically taxing policy is affecting farmers, and how we talk about the fact that there's a reduction in the crop this year, and most of that reduction is laid at the feet of climate change. but are there other factors which are affecting it? And so go take a look at this article on tax burdens on cooperatives in Ghana. And this is going to be an area where it's going to be important that as producing countries start trying to make sure that they are in fact EUDR compliant, and there's only 11 months to go before the regulations come fully into effect. Getting taxing policy right is going to be really, really important in that fight. So as a part of all of that, we've got, here's a really interesting resource for me. So it's the U.S. Department of Agriculture, their Foreign Agriculture Service. What they've got is, what are U.S. exports of chocolate and cocoa products? And this is for 2022, which may be the most recent year that this is put together. But it's historically, so they're doing it for the decade between 2013 and 2022. But what are the largest export markets for chocolate and cocoa products from the U.S.? And I think it's really interesting that, the number, so totaling $1.86 billion, 1% compound annual growth, which is relatively slow. Number one, the biggest export market is Canada, followed by Mexico, South Africa, Philippines, Vietnam, Australia, UK, and then the EU. So if we look at 34 million over 1.86 billion, so 10% would be 180 million, 5% would be 90 million. So we're talking about, only, a couple of percent of all the exports are to EU. So what that might suggest is that compliance with the EUDR is not that big a deal when it comes to US chocolate and cocoa exports. So it may affect some companies more than others, but overall, it's a relatively small component of the U.S. chocolate and cocoa export market. So something to consider when it comes to thinking about the EUDR compliance demands, just to let you know. Again, Lynn, hey, thanks for staying through to the end. I'm not sure if it will make a difference to you, as I believe most of Hotel Chocolat is using big chocolate couverture. So historically, my understanding is that a small percentage of the chocolate, only a very small percentage of the chocolate that Hotel Chocolat is used is made from beans coming from the Rabbit Estate in St. Lucia. They try to make it seem, I believe the marketing gives sort of an umbrella feeling that a lot of the cocoa that is used in their products comes from Rabbit Estate, RABOT, by the way, Rabbit Estate, which is something that they, which is a farm that they own. There's also a restaurant called Boucan, a hotel on St. Lucia. And by the way, the brand Hotel Chocolat came before the hotel did. The answer is yes. If you actually walk into Hotel Chocolat and you look at the packaging, what you'll do is you'll find that only a very, very small amount of the chocolate that is used in Hotel Chocolat products is actually made using beans that are harvested on the Rabbit Estate in St. Lucia. And I'm not actually, so some is processed in-house, and some of them, they're little melangers and they're running things in-house. But I believe that there is a big industrial producer behind producing even the Rabbit Estate chocolate. And then they might be using chocolate from ECAM. That might be their processor. That's something I heard maybe 10 years ago. I'm not entirely certain who the processor is. And I could be wrong with that. I'm getting it from memory. And I haven't had a chance to speak with Angus Thorowell in person since about 2017 or 2018. So I don't know the state of things, but yes, it's not something that you have liked or bought for a long time. It all depends on what you're looking for, I guess. Yeah. And so if you're looking for, a British brand, right, which you can get on the high street, that is got a premium perception. You've got like what, Prestat, and a couple of others. I've been focusing on the craft chocolate scene, the specialty chocolate scene in the UK, so I don't know the high street premium brands very, very well. But yeah, so how does the branding, how does the allure of Hotel Chocolat compare with other companies? So I don't know the answer to that question entirely. That's a great question. So good morning to Mark and Yuri at Bruce in Kittredge, Colorado. Don't get me started on the impact of taxing policy, import taxes on small businesses like ours, well worth a whole show. Yeah, Mark, for people who don't know, on Sunday, once a month, I have a members AMA call, and Mark is a regular in these monthly AMA calls. So when you do become a member, you'll get the monthly newsletter, and the monthly newsletter will tell you when that meeting has. It's usually on the third or fourth Sunday of the month. And we talk about a number of things, and this concept came up this weekend in the call with Mark. He was approached by someone from the Better Business Bureau or something other like that, and they were talking about a number of things affecting small businesses. And one of the things that was not on the list was, what would the effect be of an import tariff? And for a small for a small business like a craft chocolate business, you need to think about, okay, right, your cocoa beans, number one, cocoa butter, number one, vanilla would be another one. If you're using most forms of sugar, so if you're using an unrefined sugar or an organic sugar, chances are it's grown outside of the United States. So boom, and that's import duties, which would be marked up along the way. All of the equipment that you're purchasing outside the United States would also have this 10% import. It would be really, really huge. And I suppose the question is, what is going to be packaging? So if you're buying packaging, for example, from China, it all of a sudden would cost 10% more. What would that mean? In terms of when you start adding all these things up, what it mean in terms of gross operating margins for the business, and whether or not it's something you'd be able to absorb. It's a huge question. And so, yeah, Mark, I'm gonna see if I can find somebody we can talk about tax policy and see what the potential issues are. Yeah, packaging costs are a part of it. I'm also going to see if I can get a transcript of the talk that was given at ICD, at the International Chocolate and Cocoa Forum in Lagos, from the ambassador, because I would love to be able to just share what it is that he said. For me, it was just really, really a fascinating argument. I think the final things that I want to talk about, well, what I wanted to get to, and I think I'm going to enjoy it. So I did links to about production statistics. You can go find daily cocoa prices. You can find prices for cocoa. I mean, $4,800 is the futures price. Yesterday, it down 6. It's the price is insane in many respects. I think a lot of this is driven by uncertainty associated with the EUDR, as well as the fact that harvests in Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, and to some extent Nigeria, are really, really way down compared with last year's production. And so, there is a tight supply, and because there's a tight supply, the demand price has gone through the roof. Interestingly enough, in a controlled economy like Ghana, the farmer doesn't see a lot of this price increase, because the price at the farm gate is controlled by a government agency, in this particular case, COCOBOD, in the case of Ghana. And to some extent, the Ivory Coast is less regulated, but is still fairly highly regulated when it comes to pricing, at the farm gate. But in Nigeria, for example, which has a much more open market, a lot more of this money, right, a lot more of these increased market prices are getting to the farmer. So even though overall production is down, right, by not as much as it is in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire. So even though overall production is down in Nigeria, it turns out, because of the increase in the market price, that actually Nigerian cocoa farmers are better off than their counterparts in other parts of West Africa, because they're actually able to demand a higher percentage of the market price at the farm gate. So it's interesting, again, how taxing policy and government policy does affect the lives and livelihoods of farmers. And we also need to be very, very careful not to fixate on, living income, the amount of money that's in the pocket. So, I mean, when we think about lives and livelihoods, we also need to think about access to medical care, access to education, water security, food security, transportation security, and other things which have a contribution to overall household health, not just household income, right? And so while it is really, really important that these farmers do earn more for their labor, or earn something which is more close to the value of their labor, we also need to think about all of the other ancillary costs, which make up the cost of living. So for example, when I was in Nigeria in 2021, the exchange rate was about 700 naira to the US dollar, and when I was there 2 weeks ago, it was closer to 1,000. And so, what does that do to daily living costs? So we need, we don't think about cost of living adjustments and exchange rates and things like that when we start thinking about, okay, what is living? What does it mean to be able to have enough income and other resources to be able to, think upwardly mobily, have a chance that my children's lives will be better than mine. So, while this is a really interesting number, it may be on a constant dollar price much higher than it has been since the 1970s. Adjusted for inflation, it's still very, very low. So we need to be able to keep that in mind. Also, just if you're a chocolate maker, this is a bit of legislation that came into effect this past June 27th. Again, I'm not entirely sure why it's slow. June 27th just happens to be my birthday. But go take a look what you need to be aware of in terms of your responsibilities as a small business owner under the Inform Act, and what you need to be able to provide in case somebody comes to you and says, okay, I don't necessarily believe what's on your packaging. So look very, very carefully. And it does affect primarily large volume online sellers and third-party sellers. So if you're making something and you're selling it on Amazon, for example, through a third party, or fulfilled by Amazon or something like that, then you need to be prepared to provide this information to Amazon, as they may ask you for it. So, go think about what you need to do under the Inform Act. You can read it and then maybe spend an hour with a lawyer and an accountant to understand what its impact on your business is going to be. A couple of interesting kinds of things. Just a really one is that there is a Colombian cooperative called Chocolate Cordillera. So it's a cooperative. So they are achieving a certification. So the Colombian Institute, Colombian Sustainable Chocolate Brand Chocolate Cordillera, announced that 106 female cocoa farmers from Urubá, Antioquia, had completed the first module of a sustainability program, giving confidence that the business will become fully independent and start their own, and that the women will be able to become fully independent and start their own business. So I think that's when we think about gender equity in producing countries, we need to understand that there are some cultural differences. So what's important to, for example, Americans and Europeans about gender equity may not be reflected in the cultures. So, for example, of African tribes, where women tend to be much more involved in management and other decisions. So gender equity is a really, really interesting concept, and we don't necessarily want to impose foreign ideas. So we think this is the way you should run your culture, as opposed to let's respect what your culture is. However, this is an organization of women who've gone and done this and want to work. And so I think that anytime that these efforts spring up, that they be supported in every way that they can. There's a historical connection in some parts of Latin America where that you have been successful in your work with a local organization when there is a larger percentage of female involvement. If the women is delivering the cocoa and they're the ones who are getting paid, there's a greater likelihood that money will be used to cover household costs, for example. But again, this is a cultural thing. But huge wins. Kudos to everybody involved in this project. And I look forward to following up and seeing what the future success has to be with this group. And finally, for today, because I'm a tech nerd, I saw this come through. There's the U.S. Department of Agriculture has a service called TELUS. which is a press service. And I get an email from them at least once a week, and they're talking about something called isochloric freezing as the future of food preservation. It's a really interesting concept. What you do is you put the food that you want to preserve inside a chamber, and then what you do is you put a liquid under pressure outside of this chamber. It's not clear what this internal vessel is. I mean, is it a vacuum bag, right? Is it a piece of Tupperware? I mean, I don't know what the chamber, what it is, and it doesn't say in this article. But what you do is you freeze the liquid under pressure outside of this. And so what that does is it under pressure and under temperature, what it does is it preserves what's on the inside at a much higher temperature. So above -5 degrees centigrade, at a much, much higher temperature than would normally be the case for long-term preservation. You have to be very, very careful about the pressure, because more pressure means more likelihood of destroying cell walls through pressure. I mean, if you ever know anything about freezing, one of the reasons why you want to blast freeze, right, is that the quicker you get the water from an unfrozen state to a frozen state, the smaller the ice crystal that is formed. The slower it takes, the larger the ice crystal formation is. And often the damage that happens to the cell walls in a piece of food, for example, a raspberry, right, a frozen raspberry, one of the reasons why they go soft and mushy is that in the process of thawing, the ice crystals have grown very, very large, and they've ruptured cell membranes in the food. And so the whole idea of isochloric freezing is that you'll be able to preserve things at higher temperatures using a combination of pressure and temperature. I don't know how this scales, right? If you have to put everything inside something and then put that in something else and keep it under pressure, I don't know. I think again, is it the future of food preservation? I don't know that it is. Is it a part of a future? I'd like to see how energy intensive it is. How am I using a whole lot less electricity and other things like that? I don't know what kind of fluid is required in order to do the pressure. But I'm a geek, and I like these kinds of things, and so I thought it might be interesting to share this new bit of technology. Even to understand whether it makes it out of the lab into industrial scale, I have no idea. I think it would need to be we would need to be less expensive in a total cost of ownership, or sort of life cycle assessment. So it would need to be more efficient from an energy perspective and all other perspectives, and be able to scale up to huge production, right, without adding a whole lot of new steps into the process in order to make it work. But I could imagine that there are some niche applications which would be for which something like this might serve a really, really positive purpose. And again, I will keep a lookout for isochloric freezing and find out whether it's something that something that for which there is any follow-up information, and let you know. And that's it for this episode of Pod Safe Chocolate. I want to thank everybody who's watched in part or to the end. Thank you very much. If I want to remind everybody that every episode of Pod Safe Chocolate is sponsored by members of the Chocolate Life. You can go up here into the top navigation. I'm logged in, so it says account, but you can go in, and if it says join, you can join. There are always free memberships. You'll get a monthly newsletter. You'll be able to see members-only content as well. And if you do have the resources, and I know it's always a challenge to be able to support all of these things, I don't do Patreon. I don't do advertising. The only support I ask is for the memberships and the Chocolate Life, which start out at as little as $5 a month or $42 a year. That 42 is a giveaway for Douglas Adams and the ultimate answer to life, the questions of life, the universe, and everything. For those of you who are also Douglas Adams fans, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I do appreciate that. And with that, the end of today's episode. Thanks everybody for watching. And to remind you, as I do at the end of almost every live stream, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. And so until the next time, everybody, have fun. Cheers.